passionate, driven, enthusiastic, euphoric. This is who we are as entrepreneurs. But how we leverage these incredible attributes to dream and build businesses that scale and grow is what this podcast is all about. Hello, I'm attorneypreneur Josh Brown, and welcome to Franchise Euphoria. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Franchise Euphoria. Today, I'm thrilled to have on Carmen Torres. Carmen is the owner and chief specialist at My HR Specialist. She brings over 20 years of experience creating equitable, safe, and collaborative workplace environments for both employers and employees. As a trusted advisor to many organizations, she has successfully helped countless small to mid-sized businesses and nonprofit organizations establish reliable, stable human resources departments. Her approach includes a 360 analysis of the human resources function that results in building job descriptions, policy and procedure manuals, conflict resolution, employee retention and termination structures, compliance, audit standards, and employee communications. Wow, that sounds like the full range there, Carmen. How you doing?
Fine, thank you, Josh. Yes, indeed, it is.
Well, you are. I told you off the recording that this is a first for Franchise Euphoria. I've got an HR specialist on here, which is fantastic because most of the time we talk about all things business and franchise related, and of course, human resources is such a big deal for any viable business. And certainly in this day and age, HR is of the utmost importance.
Yes, that is true. And I think exactly what you said, a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, they focus on the operation side of their business and they forget about the HR aspect and how crucial that is for a successful business, when they have employees in particular.
So do you come in as your business model is you come into an organization that's already established or been set up, and then do you provide outsourced HR services, or how does your model work?
Yes, that's exactly what I do. I outsource or I provide a service to them because in the beginning stages, they don't have the need for a full-time HR person. And so I come in, I assess where they're at, determine what the needs are, and provide them a map, if you say, for either immediate needs, 3 to 6 months, and then long-term. And based on that, we determine, what steps to take first. It might be something from starting a new hire packet to creating job descriptions, creating an employee handbook, or updating an employee handbook if they already have one. And then it may lead into other areas such as training and development, training of their managers, or performance management, corrective actions. They also might have a situation where maybe they're not aware of how to handle a leave of absence for an employee. So I'm available to respond to any employee relations matter that the client or the business owner might have.
Well, I think that's really interesting and a great service because, in the franchise space, a lot of people who own and operate or become owner operators of franchise systems, many of them have never actually owned a business before. They might have managerial experience. They might have been in a corporate structure, but then going to own their own business is something that's very, very new. And I got to imagine a whole lot of them don't have any kind of real hands-on HR experience. They may have worked in companies where there were HR departments, but as anybody who's owned his or her own business, and I can certainly attest to this, when you have your own business, HR is a whole new thing, and it can be very, very stressful. It can be very difficult to do the right way because it involves relationships with other human beings and hiring and firing and everything in between. I'm curious with what you do, are you typically working with an HR department, or are you often working with an entrepreneur, owner, operator who doesn't have a department? And so you're kind of coming in and learning everything about their business and then trying to help them once you kind of get a good feel for what they do.
Yes, that's exactly what I do. Most of the time, I work with the entrepreneur and the person who's actually the operations manager in most cases, and helping them develop, an HR trend or develop policies and regulations for their staff. Just help them coordinate the systems that are necessary and provide the tools. Maybe it might be templates or, as I mentioned, training that they might need in order to be able to address all those issues. And most of the time, you're right, they do not have that HR experience. Maybe they were a manager and supervised 10 employees, even, 200 employees, but they still are not familiar with the laws based on their state, either state or federal laws in the areas of discrimination, hiring, for example, because if they worked at a large company where they had an HR department, then HR made sure that they were following any guidelines and requirements when it came to hiring and avoiding discrimination.
Now, you also said you help employers with creating job descriptions for their employees before they hire. Is that right?
Yes, yeah, that is right. A lot of the clients that I have will reach out to me when they have recruitment needs. They might need to fill 2-3 positions at once, and so they'll reach out to me. I help them develop those job descriptions, inquire about what their needs are, and then develop the description so that it fits for their immediate needs. They're able to use it also at the job posting, and then be able to provide it to the employee. And it's also a really great guideline as they're working on their performance evaluations in the next, 6 months to a year. And so it'll include job descriptions. It will include the new hire training to the employee, and as well as the onboarding process.
See, that's so important. I got to tell you, I just, I know as, me being the owner of a business and operating it and having some employees, it is so difficult to sit down and actually put down on paper what your description is for what you're looking for. Like, most people don't think that that's difficult to do because they go, oh, I know, I'm looking for an assistant, and, I want the assistant to do whatever assistants do. But when you really get down to it, it is so, at least I found it's so important to have a detailed description so that not only you have, as the owner, you have a clear idea of what you're looking for, but just as important, or maybe even more important, the person that you're hiring has a clear idea of what they're getting into. And because I've done, in the past, I've had experiences where I've hired really, really fast because I've needed somebody. And most of the time when I've done that, it just has not worked out. But yet when I've taken the time to really dig in and say, this is exactly what I'm looking for, and make sure that the person actually meets those qualifications as a good fit, it works out a whole heck of a lot better. Yes.
And that's a topic that comes up regularly for me. A lot of my clients, it's exactly what they're saying. They say, I'm reaching out to you because I know that you've worked with another person and they referred me to you, and they told me it's working out great for them because you had a process that was followed. And the person that you're hiring also wants to come into an environment where they know that they're going to be able to utilize, their skill set, that they're going to be able to grow. You bring someone in and you say, well, I want you to file this for me right now. And then when you're done with that, take a look at this or input this data or, do a research on this thing. And then before you know it, 2 hours pass by, they finished all the work, and there's nothing to do for the next, 4 to 5 hours. So it's really important for them to feel that they are being utilized to the best of their ability, so they don't feel like they're wasting their time.
Well, and oftentimes too, when people sit there and they feel like there is nothing to do, there actually is a lot to do, but the owner's just not organized enough to have told them what to do, you know?
Yes, definitely. And that's part of the assessment that I do when I come in and I assess what their needs are. I find out, where are you spending most of your time, and what is it that you would really like to delegate to give you the opportunity to do what you do best, which is run the business, the operations of it, and bring in more income. And through that process, I'm able to help them create a job description that really brings in the kind of individual that will support them the way they need.
So have you found over the time in which you've been doing this that across the board for somebody who's a new owner, as I mentioned earlier, maybe it's somebody who's owning a business or buying a business for the first time. What are some of the important things that someone should look for or consider before they bring on or hire an employee?
I think one of the things that I've noticed is that they realize that they don't have enough work for someone. So be clear on what you're looking for. Sometimes, especially right now, virtual assistants are just amazing for those business owners who just have a few hours a week where they need assistance. So taking that into consideration. Again, like I mentioned before, is understanding what is it that you would like to let go of? What can you delegate to someone else? Being clear on that. And bringing in someone who wants to be in that environment, who is comfortable with being in a new environment where they may have to, take on a little bit more things, or someone who's proactive. I think that's really important for them to consider.
So do you find that you're consulting with people who think they might want a full-time employee, and then after you work with them, they realize, well, maybe I just need, an independent contractor who doesn't work full-time, is maybe works for other people, but just comes in and helps me on certain projects?
Yes, that works very well. Or even just having a part-time employee. Some of the people or business owners that I'm working with, they want to have someone on site, and therefore they hire a part-time person to be able to do that, whether it's answering phones, being available to greet their customers, but making sure that they're utilizing their time wisely, because you also want to be considerate of your expenses and make sure, again, that you are using them where you need them.
Now, once somebody's hired somebody on and they've, let's assume they found the right person or who they think is the right person, what do you recommend that they do to kind of have checks and balances along the way? Because I think sometimes people, they spend a lot of time looking for the right person. They get the right person on, they get them going, and then they realize they don't really have a mechanism in place to really measure what they're doing. I mean, I've experienced this myself in my own firm, where it was really difficult to really measure how somebody was doing. Were they meeting my needs, what I was looking for? How could they improve? I mean, all those things are so important in the development of somebody as an employee.
Yes, and it does have to start someplace. So whether it's yourself as the owner who is trying to determine that, and if you just start writing down all of the assignments that you manage, that you handle on a daily basis, track the amount of time that it takes you to do that, or whether it's bringing that new hire, whether part-time or full-time, and asking them to start keeping track of that, that will definitely help you. Having a checklist of the day-to-day items that need to be handled, a weekly checklist, as well as a monthly, quarterly, and even an annual checklist eventually, that will help you stay on track, determine how much time it takes to handle every aspect of that position. And in addition to that, if that person decides to leave, then you have something in place for the next person to come in, take a look. So making sure that it's documented, the entire procedure is documented, so that someone else can walk in and be able to do the job as well, without having to have a full training like you did with your first hire.
See, that's really fantastic. I really am a proponent of that. Do you help people create those documented type systems so that if one person doesn't work out, somebody else can come in, and instead of having to explain everything over again, you can just point them to a document that says, okay, here's how you do X, Y, and Z?
Yes, I do that. I will guide them through that process. I'll have, the person who's actually doing the work, I'll have them document what they do for approximately a week. Sometimes it could be longer. And then based on that, I take a look at it and expand on it I will follow up with them, ask them questions to make sure that I understand what their process is. And then I actually go back and make sure that what they wrote and what we have on paper is what they're doing. So I make sure that it works so that when you do use it in the future for training, we know that it's something that works. And along the way, sometimes someone might have a way to save some time, and that's fine. It's just a matter of having a procedure in place that others can follow.
So how long typically then will you, I mean, I know it probably varies with each business, but are you typically brought on for, a specific project? Or are you brought on a sort of a month to month basis, or how does that work with your business?
Yeah, so some of my clients are on a month-to-month basis, where others on a retainer or just on an as-needed basis. They call me, they know I'm available to them certain number of hours of the month. With other clients, I have a set number of hours where I'm either in their offices helping them, working with their management team, or working on projects from my office. And again, it could be anything from handbooks, updating handbooks, creating new policies and procedures for them, creating a training, or going to their space and offering a training there. And a lot of the clients that I have right now, they've been long-term. My longest client right now is about 4.5, almost 5 years.
Wow.
And every month there's a project that I help them with, or I'm available to their employees if they have comments, questions, concerns about their benefit plans, payroll information that they might not understand. They're able to, call my 800 number and let me know what their thoughts are, and then I will coach them through that process.
So there's the old adage that, you want to hire slow and fire fast. And I think that sounds good, and it makes for a great soundbite. But anybody who's hired and had to fire somebody knows that it's easier said than done. What are some of the tips that you would give to somebody? We've talked a little bit about the hiring process, but now if you start to realize that your employee's not working out, or you get that sort of inkling to say, yeah, this might not have been a great hire, what do you recommend that people do? Typically, obviously, it varies case by case, but just in a very broad sense, what are some of the things that employers can do to help protect themselves a little bit better in case an employee doesn't work out?
Well, it all starts in the beginning when you make the job offer. You want to make sure that you are not promising them any length of employment. Don't say things like, once you pass your 90 days or your probationary period, you're good to go. We're like family here, and everyone stays here for a long time. Those are all promises that you're making to them, letting them know, hey, if you pass your 90-day probationary period, and I prefer to call it introductory period, by the way, but, and if you let them know, if you pass this period, then you're good. You're in a great place. You're letting them know that you're not going to terminate them in the future for any reason. So what I suggest, especially if you're an at-will employer, such as California, what I suggest is that you let them know that the introductory period, or that the first 90 days, is an opportunity for both the employer and the employee to get to know each other, understand whether or not this is the right position for the individual, and moving forward, you'll have the opportunity to address issues that come up. But what happens is that a lot of employers do not document areas of problem areas of concern that they may have with the employee. So lack of documentation is what eventually keeps the employer from being able to terminate someone when they're not the right fit.
Yeah, I see that a lot. Big problem. Folks out there listening, you got to document. You got to keep track of. You got to have a file for your employees, and you got to keep track of their progress and when things go wrong. So that's really good advice. So you had mentioned an introductory period, which I really do like. That sounds a whole heck of a lot better than a probationary period, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It's always really nice to have a positive twist to everything that you do, everything that you communicate to your employees. Because if they feel like there are just so many rules, there's so many negative policies in place, that's the kind of energy that you're going to create in your business. So you want to create that positive energy, and introductory period sounds much better, a much better place to be working at.
Do you recommend it for a 90-day period? Is that what you typically recommend?
Yes, I think that 90 days really does allow you the opportunity to provide the training that they require, allow them time to actually do the work, and for you to be able to see what kind of progress they have. And I do believe that 90 days is a good time frame.
So we kind of skipped over this at the beginning, but before we go, I need to ask you, you spent 20 years in HR, in the HR related field. Tell me, did you work for an organization, or tell me a little bit about your experience in this field?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yes, I did. I do have just over 20 years of HR experience, and it started really as an executive assistant to a chief financial officer of a very large company, and he had me working as doing payroll for the hourly employees, as well as communicating information to them regarding their jobs. And as a result of that, I really enjoyed that opportunity to work with people, to help people, and to be the advocate for employees. And so I went to a few companies, and eventually actually, as a matter of fact, 7 years ago, I was with a really amazing company, and unfortunately, I had to lay off 90% of the staff.
Wow.
From that company. And my experience throughout the years prior to that really allowed me to address that in a way that included, respect and dignity for everyone involved, because it was a huge loss for so many employees. And my experience allowed me to be able to communicate it to them in a way that they understood, it was not their fault. This is what the company is doing to help get you through this process. And this is amazing because you let go of so many people, but to get the feedback that I received, such as, wow, this is, the best termination I've ever been through, so it was really amazing. But again, I think that when I decided, and at that point, I was also faced with the fact of, do I take a 50% cut somewhere else, or do I start my own business? And with the feedback that I was getting, I just thought, I'm ready. I have the experience. I have the knowledge. I understand people. I enjoy communicating with employees and helping employers make the right decisions. This is time for me to build something on my own. And, I started doing this as an independent contractor, and then eventually now having my business, my HR specialist. And it's just amazing. I'm very, very happy. I love what I do. I think it's because of that is that I'm able to help the clients also, take their message across and make sure that it's positive with their employees.
You're an HR specialist with a heart, Carmen.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you're located in California. Do you take on clients across the country?
Yes, I actually have some clients in Texas, Arizona, and as a matter of fact, I have worked with a client in Canada as well. So I can actually say I'm an international HR specialist.
Well, that's fantastic. So you are, again, just to reiterate for the folks listening, you're the owner and chief specialist of My HR Specialist, and you can be found at myhrspecialist.com. You can also be found on Facebook at facebook.com/myhrspecialist. Where else can people go to get a hold of you?
Well, what I'd like to do is, if you wouldn't mind me offering a free report to your listeners.
I'd love it.
Wonderful. Well, they can actually go to the website at myhrspecialist.com and click on the button there, add their name, their email, and they'll be able to download one of the free special reports that I have available. One of them is on employee versus independent contractor, another one on the importance of having a handbook, and as well as a, oh my goodness, let me see, I have three of the handbook, the employee versus contractor, and interns to pay or not to pay.
Oh, that's big. Those are all really great topics. Those hit on a lot of legal areas. And of course, this kind of area, the HR stuff, is something that, a lot of entrepreneurs, because it's not really the sexy part of a business. It's not really the stuff that gets people too excited about it. But, it's so necessary, because I've seen businesses really take a hit, and some get destroyed because they really have not paid attention to the HR component, especially if they're having some success. They're having some success, they're having some growth. So I can't say enough how important it is. And I thank you so much for coming on today. And you're doing some really, really interesting and great stuff, it sounds like.
Oh, thank you, Josh. I really appreciate the comments, and I'm glad that you've asked me to be on your show.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for being a great guest, and look forward to staying in touch.
Likewise. Thank you very much.
Hopefully this was helpful for you today. If you are in the market for a franchise, I would highly encourage you to check out my free ebook, which is What to Know Before You Buy a Franchise. You can head over to my website at that's INDY franchiselaw.com, and download it there for free. And let me know what you think. If you're enjoying this podcast, if you're enjoying the value that you're getting from this podcast, I'd also invite you to go to iTunes and provide me with a rating and review. It always helps for visibility on the podcast. So thank you so much for your support, and hope this episode was helpful to you.
Thanks for being with us today on the Franchise Euphoria podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to go to iTunes and provide a review. Also, please remember that although Josh Brown is a licensed and practicing attorney, nothing contained in this podcast should be construed as legal advice, because it is not. The information contained in this podcast is general and educational in nature, and none of it should be relied upon as legal advice. That being said, if you have questions for Josh and would like to contact him, please email him at josh@franchiseeuphoria.com. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you tune in to our next weekly episode.